Let's learn about genetic inheritance. Genes are parts of our DNA that can be translated into biological molecules, such as proteins, and they govern most of the functions in our bodies. All animals are what's called diploid organisms, which means we have 2 copies of each gene in every cell. One of those copies came from the mother's egg, and the other from the father's sperm cell. Those 2 copies can be different from one another, or the same, and their interaction with the copies of other genes is what makes up who we are. Usually, we learn that genes act independently of each other in order to make the outcomes of them a little easier to understand. However, that is not exactly true for all genes and their related characteristic. In some cases, epistasis occurs. Epistasis happens when the expression of one gene changes the expression of another. Let's take a look at a fictitious example to make things a little easier. Imagine that this genetic pathway happens in Great Danes. What this tells us is that gene A is responsible for the production or not of hair pigment. A Dane that has 2 copies of the little a gene won't be able to produce any pigment and will then be an albino. Gene B, on the other hand, tells what color that pigment would be if the hair cells could produce any. Gene big B is the dominant one and it gives black pigment. Gene little b is recessive and gives blue pigment. This is called a single recessive epistasis because a dog recessive for gene A will always be an albino independently of what gene B says. Let's try out some crosses. First, we have big A little a and big B little b for both parents. Here are the probability tables, and we can create a branch diagram from this. From the gene A cross, 3/4 will be pigmented and 1/4 will be albino. Then from the B cross, 3/4 have the gene for black pigment and 1/4 for blue pigment. So we end up with 9/16 black puppies, 3/16 blue puppy, 3/16 albino puppy with genes for black pigment, and 1/16 albino puppies with genes for blue pigment. Since none of these are pigmented, in the end we have 4/16 albino puppies. For our second cross, we have big A, big B crossed with little a, big B, little b. Again, here are the probability tables. On this cross, note that none of the puppies will have 2 little b genes, and so all will have pigment for black fur. From the gene A cross, half will be pigmented and half will be albino. From the B cross, all are black. So, we end up with half black puppies and half albino puppies with genes for black pigment.